My name is James Parker, and I'm 68 years old. After 40 years of working, saving, and putting my family first, I thought retirement would finally be the time when I could relax and enjoy the life I had earned. I was wrong. The person I trusted most with my retirement money was my own son. He took nearly $280,000 from me, lied to my face, and then had the nerve to come back and ask me for more. What he didn't know was that I had already discovered exactly what he had done, and instead of confronting him, I decided to let him keep talking until he exposed himself completely. I retired at 68 after spending most of my working life supervising a manufacturing plant in Ohio. It wasn't an easy job, but I was proud of it. I started there when I was 28 years old, back when people still believed you could stay with one company for decades and build a decent life if you worked hard enough. I never became rich, but I learned how to live below my means. I bought a modest house, paid my mortgage down early, drove the same truck for years, and contributed to my retirement accounts whenever I could. My wife, Carol, passed away 7 years before I retired. That loss changed me. For a long time, I didn't know what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. Carol had been my best friend for more than 40 years, and after she was gone, the house felt twice as big and 10 times quieter. The one person who kept me going was my son, Michael. Michael was 39, married, and had 2 children. I loved those kids more than anything in the world. Every time they came over, the house felt alive again. Michael wasn't perfect. He had struggled financially over the years. He changed jobs several times, had accumulated credit card debt, and once had trouble keeping up with his mortgage payments. But he was my son. Whenever he needed help, I tried to be there. When he was younger, I helped pay for college. When he needed a reliable car, I helped him buy one. When his first house needed repairs, I gave him money for the roof. I never kept a record of those things because I never considered them loans. They were gifts. I was his father. That's what fathers do. By the time I retired, I had around $280,000 in retirement savings that I considered separate from my other assets. It had taken decades to build that money. Some of it came from my 401k, some from savings, and some from investments I had accumulated over the years. I wasn't planning to live a luxurious life. I wanted something simple. I wanted to pay my bills without worrying. I wanted to take a road trip across the country. I wanted to visit the Grand Canyon. I wanted to spend more time with my grandchildren. And I wanted to know that if I lived into my 80s or 90s, I wouldn't have to depend on my children to survive. The first few months of retirement were wonderful. I slept until 7 instead of 5. I drank coffee on my back porch. I started walking every morning. I repaired things around the house that I had ignored for years. For the first time in decades, Monday didn't mean anything to me. Then Michael started talking about my money. It began innocently. One afternoon, we were sitting in my kitchen while my granddaughter colored at the table. Michael looked at me and said, "Dad, have you ever thought about getting some professional help with your retirement accounts?" I smiled. "I've managed them this long." "I know, but things are different now." "Different how?" "You're retired. You need to think about making the money last." I nodded. "I've been thinking about that." Michael leaned back. "I've been learning a lot about investments." I laughed. "Since when?" He laughed too. "Seriously, Dad, I've been researching this stuff for years. I didn't think much of it. A few weeks later, he brought up the subject again. He told me that one of his friends worked with an investment group. He said they had strategies for retirees. He said my money was sitting in places where it wasn't growing as efficiently as it could. He made it sound like he was trying to help. Then he said something that made me feel proud. "Dad, you worked your whole life for that money. I don't want you to lose it because you're not keeping up with the financial world." I looked at my son. "You're worried about me?" "Of course I am." That was all it took. I trusted him. Michael told me I didn't need to understand every detail. He said he would help me organize everything. He introduced me to a man named Stephen, whom he described as a financial consultant. Stephen was friendly. He wore expensive suits. He talked confidently. He told me my retirement money could potentially grow if it was structured properly. I asked a lot of questions. Stephen answered them. Michael sat beside me the whole time. At one point, Michael put his hand on my shoulder. "Dad, you can trust me." Those words made me sign. I moved a portion of my retirement savings into an investment arrangement that Michael recommended. At the time, I believed I was making a smart decision. I didn't realize I had just opened the door to the biggest betrayal of my life. For several months, everything seemed normal. Michael called me regularly. He asked how I was doing. He brought the kids over. He helped me with small things around the house. He even started calling me every Sunday morning. "Dad, how's retirement?" "Pretty good." "Need anything?" "No." "You sure?" "Yeah." Looking back, I understand what he was doing. He wasn't checking on me. He was checking whether I had discovered anything. Then one morning, I received a financial statement. I opened it while drinking coffee. I expected to see a normal balance. Instead, I saw something that made my stomach drop. There was a large transfer. I called Michael. "Hey, son." "What's up, Dad?" "I got a statement." "Okay." "There's a transfer here." Silence. Then he said, "Oh yeah, that's part of the strategy." "What strategy?" "The investment structure I told you about." "Why wasn't I told about the transfer?" "You were." "No, I wasn't." Michael sighed. "Dad, don't worry about things you don't understand." That sentence bothered me. I said, "It's my money." He became defensive. "I know it's your money. Then why don't I understand where it's going?" "Because you're making this more complicated than it needs to be." We ended the call a few minutes later. I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. After all, he was my son. But something didn't feel right. A few days later, I called the financial institution directly. I asked for a complete transaction history. The representative asked me several security questions. Then she explained that there had been multiple transfers. I asked where the money had gone. She gave me the information she could provide. I wrote everything down. One account caught my attention. It wasn't in my name. It wasn't my son's personal account. It belonged to a company. The company was called MP Holdings. I searched the name. Michael Parker was listed as the owner. I stared at the screen. My own son had a company I knew nothing about, and money from my retirement account had gone into an account connected to that company. I sat there for a long time. I wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was legitimate. Maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe Michael really was investing the money. But then I noticed the amounts. The transfers weren't going into one investment account. They were moving between multiple accounts. Some were going to the company. Some were being withdrawn. Some were going somewhere else. I called Michael again. Son, what exactly is MP Holdings? He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, It's a business. What kind of business? Investment related. You never told me you owned a company. I didn't think it mattered. It matters if my retirement money is going into it. He became angry. Dad, why are you suddenly acting like you don't trust me? I didn't answer. He continued. I've been trying to help you. Then show me the records. What records? The records for my money. He became quiet. Then he said, I'll get them. He never did. That was when I stopped asking. Instead, I started investigating. I called an independent financial professional. Then I contacted an attorney. Her name was Susan Miller. I brought her every document I had. She looked through the statements. She looked through the company records. She looked at the transfers. Then she asked me a question. Did you authorize your son to take ownership or control of these funds? I said I authorized investments because I believed he was helping me. Did you authorize him to use the money for personal expenses? No. She looked at the documents again. Then we need to find out exactly where this money went. A forensic accountant was brought in. His name was Daniel. He spent weeks tracing the transactions. I tried not to think about the worst possibility, but every time Daniel called, I knew there was another piece of the puzzle. Then one afternoon, he asked me to come into his office. He put several pages on the table. Mr. Parker, I think you need to see this. I looked at the documents. There were payments to a credit card, payments toward a vehicle, mortgage payments, home renovations, a vacation, private school tuition, and several transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. I looked at Daniel. Are you saying my son used my retirement money to pay his personal bills? He nodded. That's what the records indicate. I couldn't speak. For several minutes, I just stared at the table. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding. How much? Daniel took a breath. Based on what we've traced so far, approximately $280,000. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. $280,000. That wasn't just money. That was 40 years of my life. It was every paycheck, every sacrifice, every time I chose to save instead of spend. Every morning I got up when my body didn't want to, and my son had taken it. I drove home that afternoon without turning on the radio. When I walked through the front door, the house was silent. I looked at the photographs of Michael as a little boy. There he was at 6 years old, missing his front teeth. There he was at 12, holding a fishing rod. There he was at 18, on his graduation day. I had spent my entire life trying to give that boy a better future. And now that same man had stolen the future I had saved for myself. I cried that night, not because I wanted the money back, I did, but because I couldn't understand how my own son could look at his father and see an opportunity instead of a person. The next morning, I called Susan. I want to confront him, she said. Not yet. Why? Because we need to know how much evidence exists. What else could there be? We don't know. So I stayed quiet. Michael kept calling me. Dad, you okay? Yeah. You seem distant. I'm just tired. He didn't know that his own father was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of documents proving what he had done. Then one Sunday afternoon, Michael came over. He brought the kids. They ran through the house. My granddaughter hugged me. My grandson asked if I wanted to play outside. I smiled at them. I couldn't blame those children. They didn't know anything. Michael sat across from me. "Dad, I need to ask you something." I looked at him. "What?" "I've got an opportunity." I almost laughed. "What kind of opportunity?" "A business opportunity." "How much?" He hesitated. "About 30,000. I stared at him. "You need $30,000? Just temporarily? Why?" "I can explain." I looked at him. "Explain." He started talking about a business deal, a short-term opportunity, a guaranteed return, a chance to make more money. It sounded exactly like the story he had told me before. But now I knew what was happening. He wasn't asking because he needed an opportunity. He was asking because he believed there was still money left for him to take. I said, "I'll think about it." His eyes brightened. "Really?" "Yeah." He smiled. "Thanks, Dad." After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen. Then I called Susan. "He just asked me for another 30,000. She was quiet. Then she said, "Good." I was confused. "Good?" "Yes, let him keep talking." "What do you mean?" "If he believes you still trust him, he'll probably reveal more." And she was right. Over the next several weeks, Michael became more confident. He called me often. He asked how much money I still had. He asked whether I had spoken to anyone about my accounts. He asked whether I had changed my financial advisor. He asked whether I was planning to sell my house. Every question was carefully disguised, but I understood what he was really asking. How much is left? Can Dad still be controlled? Does Dad know? One evening, he said something that made my blood run cold. "Dad, you're getting older. You don't need to worry about managing all this yourself." I looked at him. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you should let family handle things." I smiled. "Family?" "Yeah," I nodded. "You're right." He smiled. He thought he had me. But I had already changed every important password. I had moved the accounts I could legally control. I had notified the appropriate financial institutions. I had secured my documents, and my attorney had prepared everything. The next step was waiting for Michael to make a mistake. He didn't make us wait long. One morning, Daniel discovered a document showing that Michael had represented himself as having authority over certain funds that weren't legally his to control. Susan looked at me. "Now we have a serious problem. What happens next?" "We file." I knew what that meant. The time for pretending was over. The legal process began. Michael was shocked when he received the paperwork. He called me immediately. "Dad, what is this?" I didn't answer. "Why are you doing this to me?" I finally said. "I'm not doing anything to you." "You filed against me. I'm protecting myself." "Dad, I'm your son." I closed my eyes. "That's exactly why I trusted you." He became angry. "You don't understand what happened." "I understand enough." "No, you don't." "Then explain it." Silence. He couldn't, because the documents already explained everything. He tried to claim the money was an investment. Then he said it was a loan. Then he said I had given him permission. Then he said he planned to pay it back. Every version contradicted the previous one, and the records told a different story. The forensic accountant showed where the money had gone. The company records showed Michael's ownership. The financial statements showed the transfers. The personal expenses showed the spending. And the communications showed that Michael knew exactly what he was doing. But then came the part that broke my heart all over again. Michael's wife, Emily, discovered what he had done. She had believed his story too. She thought he was running a legitimate business. When she saw the financial records, she called me. Her voice was shaking. "Mr. Parker, I didn't know." "I believe you. I swear I didn't know." "I know." She started crying. I asked him where the money came from. He told me you were helping us. I closed my eyes. I thought I was. Emily eventually separated from Michael. The family was falling apart. And for the first time, Michael realized that the money he had stolen wasn't just destroying his relationship with me. It was destroying everything around him. Months passed. The legal process continued. There were negotiations, financial reviews, documents, meetings. And eventually, the truth became impossible to hide. Michael was required to account for the money and face the legal consequence of what he had done. Some of the money was recovered through the legal process. Not every dollar came back immediately. Some money had already been spent. But the most important thing was that Michael could no longer control my future. One afternoon, after a court hearing, Michael approached me in the parking lot. He looked older, tired, defeated. "Dad?" I stopped. "What?" "Can we talk?" "We're talking." He looked at the ground. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. "I made a terrible mistake." I looked at him. "A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill." He swallowed. "What I did was wrong." "Yes." "I was desperate." "I know. I thought I could fix everything. You could have asked me." "I was ashamed." I shook my head. "You weren't ashamed when you spent the money." He looked away. Then he said something that surprised me. "I never thought you'd actually fight me." I stared at him. "That's the saddest thing you've ever said." He looked confused. "Why?" "Because you knew I was your father, so you thought I'd protect you no matter what." He didn't answer. I continued. "I would have helped you if you had come to me honestly." His eyes filled with tears. "I know." "No, Michael, you don't know." I paused. "You didn't steal money from a bank. You stole it from your father." He cried. I didn't. I had cried enough. Then I walked away. A year after everything happened, my retirement looked completely different. I had less money than I originally planned. But I had something more valuable: control. I started meeting with my own financial advisor. I learned exactly where every account was. I learned how my investments worked. I created a detailed estate plan. I organized every document. I stopped giving anyone else control, simply because they were family. And I started enjoying my retirement again. I took the road trip I had always wanted. I drove across several states. I visited the Grand Canyon. I spent a week near the mountains. I took my grandchildren fishing. They still loved me, and I still loved them. I never told them the details of what their father had done. Children shouldn't have to carry the mistakes of their parents. Michael eventually started rebuilding his life. I don't know if I will ever trust him the way I once did. Maybe I won't. But forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. I can forgive someone without giving them access to my life again. That was one of the hardest lessons I learned. One morning, I was sitting on my porch when my granddaughter called me. "Grandpa, are you home?" "Yes." "Can we come over?" I smiled. "Of course." A few minutes later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. My grandchildren ran toward me. I stood up and opened my arms, and for a moment, everything felt normal again. That afternoon, my granddaughter sat beside me. "Grandpa?" "Yeah." "Are you happy?" I looked at her. Then I smiled. "Yes." She leaned against my shoulder. "Good." After she went inside, I sat there thinking about everything that had happened. I had spent 40 years working so I could have a peaceful retirement. I thought the hardest part would be figuring out how to spend my time. I never imagined the hardest part would be protecting myself from my own son. But I learned something that I wish someone had taught me years ago. Love does not mean giving someone unlimited access to your life. Trust does not mean refusing to check your own accounts. And being a parent doesn't mean sacrificing your future to protect an adult child from the consequences of their choices. I spent years thinking that because Michael was my son, I had to protect him. Eventually, I realized something different. Sometimes protecting your child means letting them face the consequences of what they have done. My son thought my age made me weak. He thought retirement meant I was no longer paying attention. He thought because I loved him, I would never fight back. He was wrong. I didn't fight him because I hated him. I fought because I finally understood that I had a responsibility to protect the life I had spent 40 years building, and perhaps that was the greatest revenge of all. I didn't destroy my son. I simply stopped allowing him to destroy me. Today, I'm 68 years old. I still drink coffee on my porch every morning. I still take long walks. I still watch my grandchildren play. I still miss my wife. And I still think about the years I spent working. But now, when I look at my retirement account, I don't just see money. I see freedom. I see every early morning, every long shift, every sacrifice, every dollar I saved. And I know that nobody gets to take that away from me again. Not a stranger, not a business partner, not even my own child. Because retirement isn't just about having enough money to stop working. It's about having enough independence to decide how you want to live the rest of your life. My son thought he had taken my future. He hadn't. He had only taught me how fiercely I needed to protect it. And sometimes the person who betrays you gives you the one lesson you needed most. Never confuse love with blind trust. Never confuse family with entitlement. And never ever let someone convince you that because you're getting older, you no longer have the right to stand up for yourself. I spent 40 years earning my retirement. I spent months fighting to protect it. And now, every morning when I sit on that porch and watch the sun come up, I remind myself of one simple truth. My retirement belongs to me. My future belongs to me. And nobody gets to steal it again.